Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everyone, my name's Ahmad.
And my name's Safa.
And we're back for another week of Quran readings, which we have readings in Arabic, but we discuss them in English. We take a certain portion of verses from the Quran and discuss it as we do every week. This week we're going to do something a little bit different to begin with, because we had such a spicy and interesting ayah from the previous session that Safa and I have been researching, looking, discussing, thinking about it for quite some time. So we kind of wanted to go over it one more time and just share our new perspectives on it. So the way that I'm going to do it is the same way that we do it every week, which is listen to the verse and then discuss it. And then we will jump into 4:24, which is where we're going to begin today's section. So we're just going to have a little bit of a short intro that's a little bit different. But as we begin every session, we always start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, most merciful, and whose mercy is most encompassing. And A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, which means I seek refuge from God, from the devil, before we begin. But off we go.
وإن خفتم ألا تقسطوا في اليتامى فانكحوا ما طاب لكم من النساء مثنى وثلاث ورباع فإن خفتم ألا تعدلوا فواحدة أو ما ملكت أيمانكم ذلك أدنى ألا تعولوا.
Okay, so last week when we discussed this, first let's go through this bit by bit, and then we'll get into the discussions again. And if you fear that you will not be able to do justice with the orphans. Now, in the previous verses, it mentioned about taking care of orphans and making sure that they're given their rights. Then marry what seems suitable of you from the women, 2 or 3 or 4. Which again, most Muslims took it as that you can marry multiple wives, 2, 3, or 4. But in my specific view, it mentions specifically the orphans and then marry. So there's a specific tie between the condition to which you can marry multiple wives, and that condition is tied to the orphans, and we'll discuss that in a second. But if you fear that you are not able to do justice amongst the women that you married, then marry only one. Or ma Malakat Aymanakum, which means, or the general understanding from a lot of people and the general perspective is that it's the bondwomen, the women that you have taken from war. But we are here to share a different perspective and share a different understanding of
to
it.
the word, yeah.
And that is what is more appropriate so you do not oppress. So yeah, it's a very spicy topic. A lot of Muslims take this as you can marry multiple wives for the sake of marrying multiple wives. But in my opinion, the first condition is, and if you fear that you are not able to do justice with the orphans that you're trying to care for, then marry what you want from the women 2 or 3 or 4. So here it's saying that you can marry multiple wives as long as there is the condition of not being able to take care of orphans. Now we have a couple of discussions about what that means. One, it could mean the orphans, like if you're trying to take care of orphans, or like a family that had the father was killed in war, and you're trying to take care of them and you can't really care for them properly, so then you can marry their mother, the orphan's mother.
Yeah, so because at the time, of course, there were a lot of men were dying in wars and so on. So one of the understandings is that it can be that if you are not able to care for the orphans, or you're afraid that you cannot give orphans the rights, so you can marry a woman who is widowed, for example, and who has kids, to take care of the kids better and to act like a father for the kids. This is one of the understandings. There is another understanding that explains the word orphan, that says that the word orphan in the Quran was also mentioned to describe women who were not married at a certain age. So it's Surah An-Nisa.
It's 127. I pulled it up.
Yes, 127. So if we look here, so it says ويستفتونك في النساء قل الله يفتيكم فيهم ويلا في الكتاب يتامى النساء.
The orphan women.
The orphan women. You deprive of their due rights. So the understanding, the interpretation that I read is that this refers to the women who are not married at a certain stage at an older age, whether they are divorced or widowed or they don't have a man in their lives, so they refer to them as orphan women. So in that case, if you apply this understanding to the first ayah, it means that if you are not giving justice to these women as well, then you can marry women from this category. Women who are divorced or who did not get married for a long time for any reason, then you can also marry 2 or 3 or 4. And also there is the understanding that at that time, and maybe even today, in general, women are more than men for multiple reasons.
That's exactly what Mo was saying. Women outnumbered men, so multiple women marriage was encouraged.
Exactly, so multiple women marriage was encouraged because also at that time, a woman who was not married, sometimes her life was very difficult because women didn't work. It's not like today at least, and they needed protection, for example, from a man. So I guess a woman who's not married, her life would be very difficult without a man.
But to go back to the topic that Safa was saying, that women of a certain age, so the English term obviously is spinster, a woman that hasn't married, a woman that's been there in a long time. So here it's creating a somewhat condition of like saying that you can do multiple marriages under specific conditions as long as, and also like just so if we jump back to the verse, it's very clearly saying, but if you're afraid you're not able to maintain justice, then content yourselves with only one.
Yes. And then we go to the other one, which is very controversial, of course. So the general understanding for Malakat Aymanakum, so it's either 4 wives or 1, or what's your right hand possesses. That's the literal translation.
Yeah.
The general understanding in the old tafsirs, and actually I looked at the tafsirs that are now dominant between Muslims. They were written like 1,000 years ago or something, hundreds of years ago. So of course people's understanding and people's brains work differently.
Yeah.
So at that time they interpreted this to mean that you're to be your slaves, or how do you say it?
Your bondwomen.
Bondwomen, or the women that are captured in wars and so on. But when I looked into the meaning in other articles, so people who are trying to make like a modern understanding of the Quran and of Islam, and to look in the words in a different, from a different perspective, from a more modern perspective. So they said, Amen means oath.
Yeah, so here, Yameen can mean right hand, or Ayman is like faith, or like things that you have given faith for.
Oath, or a strong promise. And they also give an example. So if we jump to Surah Al-Baqarah 225.
225, Quran. Yeah.
لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. And here the translation is your oath.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when it came to the other term,
here it is.
The exact same word.
Yeah, Aymanakum.
But they explained it to be your
completely
slaves.
Yeah.
But actually, if you take the other meaning, which is in the other ayah, oath, so it means those who you are connected to or bonded to by a strong oath.
Oath, exactly.
And then in the verses that we will see today, there are other restrictions put on this relationship. But in that understanding, it has nothing to do with slavery, but it's actually women who you gave a strong oath, or you have a strong bond.
Yeah. Which, if you hear it and you hear it correctly, then it's not saying that you have to be married. It's saying that you have to give them an oath. Which means, does this mean that boyfriend-girlfriend concept works? Because you're giving them an oath that you'll be there for them and you'll protect them and you're committed to them. And then does that mean that... Wait.
But in the verses that we will read today, it also puts another restriction that even if for Malakat Aymanakum, it has to be done with the approval of the parents. So it doesn't mean that it's like it's a complete, like you can have a relationship with whoever and nobody knows about it and it's okay. It still puts restrictions on it. But I think the most positive thing I took out of this is that it doesn't mean the general understanding that was in the old books. It doesn't mean that you take captives of war and they become slaves.
But then let's take this new understanding, and it says, but if you fear that you're not able to do justice, then marry one or what possess your oaths.
Yeah.
What does that mean? If you fear that you're not able to do justice?
What I understood also, and we will go to the other verses today. It's still in Surah An-Nisa, that the marriage, mainly at that time, you have to pay a dowry for the woman, a specific dowry, and you have to take care of certain, it had financial consequences, I think. So in another verse, and we will, I don't want to talk about it too much now, but we will discuss it today, that if you are not able to fulfill the obligations of marriage, then you can have this.
Okay. Well, I think...
So I think also in fear of not having equality between the women can also mean that you are not able to take care of the women financially as well.
Yeah, so to do like a more official law-abiding oath versus...
Yeah.
But this is talking about marriage, is it not?
Here?
Yeah.
Here it's talking about marriage, yes.
فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, so if you fear that you're not able to do justice, then marry one.
Yes.
Or what possess. But this isn't talking about who you can be with. This is talking about who you can marry.
Malakat Aymanakum, I think like the new understanding would be the people who you gave an oath to.
Yeah,
an oath of marriage.
If that's the noun, if these are the people you give an oath to, what is the verb that's happening to them? What are you doing to them?
What do you mean?
Like, this whole thing is talking about marriage.
Yeah.
So it's saying marry, but then only if it doesn't work, then do justice only, then marry only one.
You will see also in the verses that will come that it's all talking about sexual relationships between people and how to regulate that.
Okay.
And because it will talk also about having desires, and that if you are able to marry, you are able to pay the dowry and so on. So the best thing for you is to get married. If not, then you can have Malakat Aymanakum as a second option, which is like to give an oath to someone until you are able to actually marry them. So I think it is in a way referring to financial also situation, but also to say that it's not all completely like you just have a girlfriend, boyfriend, and that's it. But it has also certain restrictions.
Okay.
And
well, we'll take a look into that. It's a good introduction to the verses that we're going to get today.
Yes.
And then we have the message from Lara Anderson. The meaning of the word can be changed according to context in the translation. And also in Surah Baqarah, Aymanakum is with Zabar, and Al-Nisa, it is with Pesh. What is Zabar and Pesh?
I don't know.
These are new terms for me.
Yes, me too. Of course, the words are taken in the context of the full sentence, and this is why you can give the same word multiple meanings. But I think that Malakat Aymanakum, meaning slave women, is not a meaning that can be
These are
applicable to the modern world, I would say, because this is not even something that exists now in any part of the world. So.
They're Urdu words. I'm not quite familiar with the Pakistani culture or perspective. So that
Urdu.
Yeah, both of the words, Zabar and Pesh. But I think it'd be interesting to say, so that there could also be the reason for them.
We can take it later.
Okay, all right. Well, for now, let's get back into the regular flow. We've got a lot of verses to get through, so let's get into it. Sorry.
والمحصنات من النساء إلا ما ملكت أيمانكم كتاب الله عليكم وأحل لكم ما وراء ذلكم أن تبتغوا بأموالكم محصنين غير مسافحين فما استمتعتم به منهن فآتوهن أجورهن فريضة ولا جناح عليكم فيما تراضيتم به من بعد الفريضة إن الله كان عليما حكيما.
Okay, so we jump straight into it. والمحصنات, the forbidden ones or prohibited ones of the women, except whom you possess. Aymanakum, that's the word again. You possess.
But this is connected to the previous verse. So if we go to the previous verse, it's talking about the women who are forbidden to marry.
Yeah, so your mothers,
your mothers,
daughters,
your sisters, your daughters, your aunts,
your auntettes, both aunts, but from your mother's side, from your father's side,
your nieces.
Just go back to our previous verse to kind of get into it.
And then he says, and also, and then in the next one, and the married women. Al-Muhsanat min al-Nisa, it means, it's explained as married women, but literally it means the ones who are
prohibited from you.
Muhsanat means like sealed. Guarded. The guarded women. And it is understood to mean the married women.
But if we take the context of boyfriend-girlfriend, I would also say that it's a girl that's in a relationship. Because technically there's an oath between her and the other person, and that oath protects her from you.
Yeah, so that's, I think from the context that would be like Malakat Aymanakum.
Yeah.
Kind of. Because there are certain regulations for marriage that you have to pay you have financial obligations in marriage. And we will talk about, in one of the verses it mentions that you need to pay her a certain dowry and so on. So, Muhsanat min al-Nisa means married women. So, of course, a man should not marry married women except what your hand possesses. And here it means except your own, except the ones who have an oath from you, yourself. Of course, the old interpretation from the old books and the old, they explain it in a different way that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that this means more. Makes more sense.
Here's the problem, or just playing devil's advocate here. Is it saying that you're allowed to go for these prohibited married women as long as you give them an oath?
No. So the previous verse says these are the ones who are forbidden, and then this is a continuation. Like the ones who are forbidden: your mother, your sister, your aunts, nieces,
your nieces,
and married women. And you are not also allowed to marry a married woman, except for what you possess rightfully, which is your wife or your
but so the condition except comes from all the forbidden women. The women are forbidden except
your own.
So the counter condition from this forbidden list is except.
No, it's except. So married women except your wife. Because
but your wife is not amongst those lists.
Your wife is included as a guarded woman. Your wife is a guarded woman.
So here, forget the rest of them, then just focus on this one specifically. It's the married women and the prohibited women from you, except the prohibited women, the guarded women, it's not just your wives, it's the one that you've given oaths to.
Your wives, and literally what this means is the ones who have an oath from you or who have a bond with you. Malakat Aymanakum.
Yeah.
I think this would be a good translation for it. But again, we have to say that most of the interpretations, and especially in the old books, it doesn't explain it this way. However, I looked into other, because the old explanation didn't make sense to me, so I went to other people who are like more modern and modern interpretation of Islam and the way we can see it now from the perspective of the world today. And this was a possible understanding. But also we are very lucky, to be honest, because we understand Arabic. So you can see the different meanings and the different words, how they can mean different meanings. But when you look at the translation, the English translation, I think it just it gives you the explanation given from the old interpretation books
Yeah.
that were written 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
This is what was written like in a completely different world, except female captives in your possession. This is not something that exists today, nor should it happen in any way.
So our general understanding, to make it brief, the prohibited women of the women are prohibited for you, except for the ones that you are the one prohibiting.
Yes, exactly.
You are the one whose oath is prohibiting others from having. You're the one who has the connection to.
Exactly.
This is a decree from God upon you, and lawful is for you from what beyond that is that you seek your wealth, desiring to be chaste. So here again, it's the word of.
So here it mentions a little bit what I was saying, that it links marriage also with a certain financial obligation, that you are allowed, you should be paying a certain portion of your wealth to your wife.
Yeah. غير مسافحين. Okay, so it's not based off of lust. It's based off of care, and you're there to take care of them, not just because you're horny.
Yeah.
So what you benefited of it from them, so you will give them their bridal due, an obligation, and there is no sin on you concerning what you mutually agree with of it. There's no sin if you mutually both agree to what the terms are. And from beyond the obligation, indeed, God is all-knowing and all-wise.
Yes.
Give those you have consummated marriage with their due dowries.
See here, as long as you seek them with your wealth in a legal marriage. So, in a way, you will notice in these verses that marriage, there's always a financial part, like linked to marriage. You have to pay a dowry, you have to pay a certain amount of your wealth, you have to, I don't know, you have certain obligations towards your wife financially.
Okay, so our understanding is completely different than the English translation, at least for the start of it, but the end makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, and unfortunately in these verses I think we will face this
quite a lot.
Yes.
Okay. Woo, spicy long one.
ومن لم يستطع منكم طولا أن ينكح المحصنات المؤمنات فمما ملكت أيمانكم من فتياتكم المؤمنات والله أعلم بإيمانكم بعضكم من بعض فانكحوهن بإذن أهلهن وآتوهن أجورهن بالمعروف محصنات غير مسافحات ولا متخذات أخدان فإذا أحصن فإن أتين بفاحشة فعليهن نصف ما على المحصنات من العذاب ذلك لمن خشي العنة منكم وأن تصبروا خير لكم والله غفور رحيم.
Okay, long and a bit complicated, but we'll break it down bit by bit. And whoever is not able from you to afford to marry. What is this now? Al-Muhsanat.
Again, the sealed women.
But like here.
So this is, I think, what refers to the married women.
Here it's saying the free chaste.
What?
Al-Muhsanat al-Mu'minat.
What does it mean, free chaste?
A free believing woman, not the one that's guarded. It seems to be the opposite of the meaning.
A free believing woman? Yeah, because the whole meaning of this verse in the English translation, we will read it after we discuss it.
Okay.
You will see what it is, what they explain. They explain that if you are not able to marry a free woman, then you are allowed to have slaves. Basically, you can go down.
Okay. Yeah.
Let him marry bondwoman
Yeah.
possessed by one of you. So this is the explanation here, which is based on
The
Arabic,
old classic view.
the old Arabic interpretations of the people who were here
Yeah.
hundreds of years ago.
So anyway, so what is not able among you to afford to marry?
But the alternative
The free chase from
explanation,
the
the more
believing one.
modern explanation that I read, is that if you are not able for long, basically to marry a woman, to get married, given also the obligations of the marriage, فَمِنْمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانَكُمْ. So those people who have the women who have an oath or a certain bond with you from the believing from the girls. Here it doesn't say, there is nothing that says slaves.
It just says from your girls.
Fatayatkum means girls.
For your girls.
From girls who are believers. And this also goes against the concept of war captives, because at that time the understanding is that you go to war against the people who are not believing. So normally if you capture a slave or you capture a bondwoman in a war, by default she will not be a believer, because you were fighting the non-believers. So that's the first thing that I think also doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But literally it just says the believers of the girls who are believers.
Yeah.
And God knows who is believing among you.
Amongst you from one another.
Yes.
So marry them
in with the permission of the
family.
Parents.
Yeah.
Or the family.
Their parents.
Yeah.
Parents is more accurate.
Yes.
And give them their bridal due in a fair manner. Their chaste. Yeah, so I also like muhsanat doesn't necessarily mean the married ones. It means the one whose chastity is preserved.
Yes.
It could mean that they're married, or it could mean that they're virgins and being protected by their families.
Yes.
Because they're protected by either their families or their partners or their husbands. So.
Yeah, or sealed. It can mean sealed.
Yeah, not to commit immorality, which was lustfully before, and not for those who take secret lovers. Then when they are married, and if they commit adultery.
So when you get married to them, so it says first those who have an oath from you, from the believer girls, and God knows who are the believers, then you can marry them with the permission of their parents, or like have this kind of relationship with the permission of their family. And you should pay them their due, their bridal due, or the money that you need to pay. And then in this way they will be sealed.
Chaste, not ones who are immoral.
Do not commit immorality, do not commit
and do not take secret lovers.
Yes.
Then they are married, and if they commit adultery, which again here always adultery is the breaking the vows of marriage, in my opinion.
Yes, and it is in another verse. I looked into it as well. It mentions zina huwa fahisha.
Yeah.
So it is
adultery is a break.
Yeah.
Then for them, half of what is on the free chaste woman, from the punishment.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Because there is a punishment for adultery.
Oh, so
for these women who I believe were committed with another oath, and the old interpretation is related to the captives of war or the slaves. If they commit adultery after they get married, they are punished with half the punishment of a married woman who was married from the beginning, or
half. Okay, well I don't get that, but
because we read the punishment for adultery.
We read the punishment for adultery, but I don't get why it's half for these women.
I don't know. And either way, even if you take the old explanation for it, I also don't understand why half. It doesn't also explain why it's half.
That is for whoever fears committing sin from among you, and for you to be patient. It's better for you, and God is oft forgiving and oft merciful.
Yeah.
This is for those who have
fear falling into sin, because it mentions at the very beginning of the verse that is talking to the people who cannot afford to marry a free believing woman, or in that case, a woman to marry her from the beginning, let's say.
Yeah.
So, ما ملكت أيمانكم. ما ملكت أيمانكم, you can take the early explanation, which is like the captives of war or the slaves. Or you can take another explanation that those who you gave an oath to without an actual marriage. But in all cases, you have to do that with the permission of their parents and to give them their due rights and to marry them. But
okay.
Yeah.
Complicated, a little bit, multiple meanings and perspectives. But this is all about the conditions of which you can marry and how you proceed.
Yeah.
يريد الله ليبين لكم ويهديكم سنن الذين من قبلكم ويتوب عليكم والله عليم حكيم.
Okay. And God wishes to make clear for you and to guide you the ways of those who came before you, and so that he accepts repentance for you. God is indeed all-knowing and all-wise. And here, it's kind of just telling you the why are we talking about this, and what's the perspective, why is this all in the Quran, and what is it that God wants. God wants us to all be the same people, following the same rules, though I would say that has not exactly succeeded over the time, but let's leave that discussion for another day.
والله يريد أن يتوب عليكم ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما.
Okay, and God wishes to accept repentance from you, and wishes for those who follow their desires, that you deviate a deviation that is great. I don't think this is that you deviate, because I think he's talking about them. Those who follow the passions, and wants you to deviate from them.
No, it's God wants you to repent.
Yeah,
and want the people who follow their desires to go completely.
ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات. So he's talking about them in the tense.
Yes.
أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما. Then he changes to start talking about you. He's not saying the reference here isn't that I'm talking to the people who are following their passions, and continues talking about them. He was talking about them as if we're talking about a different group, and then switches the tense to talking about you forward.
Yes.
So in the way that I understand it is slightly different. It's like saying that you guys separate completely from those people. But you and the English translation seems to say that the people who follow their desires is to follow to because for me it just changes the tense. He goes from talking about them to talking to you.
Okay.
That's how I understand it, but I see how you guys have explained it differently. But anyway, don't follow your desires.
So what you want to say is that for the people who follow their desires, to what?
That and then now he's talking to us, for us to separate from them. And تميلوا ميلا عظيما.
Okay. الله يريد أن يتوب عليكم ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات.
Maybe "an" means that, أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما. If I would say it منهم. إذا بدك تكمل الجملة.
Yeah, بس ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات would be incomplete.
Yeah, but شهوات أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما منهم.
I don't know.
Okay.
يريد الله أن يخفف عنكم وخلق الإنسان ضعيفا.
This also kind of brings us an interesting topic that I'd like to talk about. But and God wishes to lighten on you, and created mankind weak. Mankind was created weak. Now this is always a concept that I was kind of struggling with, but I think I'm recently coming to terms with the idea that we're born sinners, that we're born with mistakes in our hearts. Oh, there's this adultery is a sin according to Islamic rules. Oh, love, I'm going to prepare lunch. Thanks. Also, I have no ill feelings towards any person's religion. Okay, if I didn't convert, I stopped believing. Oh, there's been a discussion.
Okay.
Nice. I love this. So now the difference between both worlds now. So many rules. Oh, there was like a full discussion that was happening.
Okay.
It's a bit hard to kind of follow. But yeah, no. So back to this topic, that God created mankind weak. It makes sense, but it's just a concept that I used to always think that humans were good, and that humans have an innate goodness in them, because I always used to think of myself as good. But maybe the concept is that we're all sinners. And
No, but it's not about sinners. I think you can be good and weak at the same time.
yeah, weak isn't vulnerable to sin.
Yeah, but it's also weak physically. We are weak in different aspects, I think. Like we are also weak physically. We get sick. We die.
But from what I understand from the context of these,
tired and here if you understand it in the context of like marriage and so on. Yeah, because you have a person has certain needs and desires, and because God knows that you can be weak in front of those desires, then he wants to make the rules like lighter for you. Like God doesn't want to make your life more difficult. God wants to lighten your burdens, because he knows that humans were created weak. In different ways.
Yeah, I do think it's about desires, and I do think it's just the concept that we are vulnerable to sin.
Yeah.
And it makes sense also if you consider the story of the fall if you consider the story of Genesis, that they bit from the apple and they invited sin into their bodies, and thus humanity was brought to earth from heaven. And so we always have that kind of fight within us, and that these rules are really designed to help us survive the burden that it is to continue in. Okay.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما.
General terms and conditions for humans and living. O ye of those who believe, do not eat your wealth amongst yourself, which means don't consume someone's wealth unjustly. Unjustly is the word that's next. But only let there happen in trade and business, so that which is based on mutual consent, based on agreement amongst you. And do not kill amongst yourselves. Indeed, God is of you most merciful.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and then first the first part, of course, do not can you bring it back? Do not devour one other's wealth illegally. Of course, whether it's stealing or fraud, or whatever the concept of interest that we talked about before. So always gaining more wealth should be through
mutual consent and agreement between
business and business. Yeah, and then don't kill yourselves. It can be understood as yourselves, like killing yourself, like someone killing themselves, or killing among yourselves.
Yeah.
So killing each other. Yeah. So both are not allowed.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, I thought that was okay. Sure.
ومن يفعل ذلك عدوانا وظلما فسوف نصليه نارا وكان ذلك على الله يسيرا.
And whoever does that in aggression and injustice, then soon we will cast him into the fire, and that is for God made quite easy. Which, of course, having a partner who killed themselves is hard to hear, but I understand it. Does it make sense? I don't think we need to add any.
Yes,
Or does the sinfully and
it's
unjustly?
clear, yeah.
إن تجتنبوا كبائر ما تنهون عنه نكفر عنكم سيئاتكم وندخلكم مدخلا كريما
It's amazing how like any verse after the long verses feels so easy to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you avoid the great sins, the big sins, such as killing each other, killing yourselves, and what you are forbidden from it, we will remove for you your evil deeds, and we will admit you to the noble entrance, which means usually to heaven. That's the understanding. That don't commit the big sins, and we will cover. Nukaffir also means to cover something. We will cover for you your evil deeds, your sins, the mistakes that you made, and enter you into an honorable place.
Yeah, which is understood to mean heaven. Of course.
Correct.
And then it needs to be said that here, of course, if you avoid the major sins, there are a lot of debates within the Muslim community, I think, about what are the major sins. But I think in the context of this verse coming after the first one, that might imply that killing in general is one of the big sins. One of the major sins. And then there is another verse that we will cover today, which mentions that the meaning that God forgives everything except for worshipping another God with Him.
Well, we'll get to that.
We will get with it.
But here, if you're mentioning deaths, it also means that stealing someone's money that doesn't belong to yours. So consuming someone's money is also one of the great sins.
Yes, in the context of the previous verse, I think it would be both. Yeah.
Yeah.
لا تتمنوا ما فضل الله به بعضكم على بعض للرجال نصيب مما اكتسبوا وللنساء نصيب مما اكتسبن واسألوا الله من فضله إن الله كان بكل شيء عليما.
Okay, and do not covet what God has bestowed upon it on some of you over others. Do not covet what the other person has. For the men, a share is what they have earned, and for the women is a share of what they have earned. And ask God for His bounty. Indeed, God is of everything, all-knowing. So don't covet what somebody else has. Don't be envious. Don't be jealous.
Yeah.
And then just ask God for His bounty, because God has all knowledge of all things.
Yeah, and in this context, I think it's referring specifically to men and women. So it might be talking about that for men not to crave what women were awarded with, and the other way around, and women not to want what men have.
Yeah.
And then it says, for men is a share of what they have done, and it can be understood as a share in the world and a share in the afterlife as well. And the women have a share of what they have earned, and it can also mean in the world and in the afterlife. And overall, it means that there is equality, even though we are not equal. Like, do not wish what the other gender has, even though we are not 100% equal, but there is at the end justice among both, because they will both have their own share and they will both be rewarded for their shares. So
okay, could be interesting. It's a philosophical discussion of what do men have, what do women have, but mostly the way that I understand it is whether you're a man or a woman, you've earned what you've earned. Don't want what somebody else has. In my opinion, whether as a man, don't want what other men have or don't want what other women have. I think it just means that what you have is what you have, and learn to be appreciative of what you have. And if you want more, ask God for His bounty, because God is of everything, all-knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I find it interesting the saying all-knowing instead of all-capable. I don't know why that was there. Because I would think if you're asking God for things, you want him to be capable.
The way I understood it, it can mean that God is all knowing of this for this justice. Like God is all knowing that
what everybody deserves, what everybody earns.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe you do not see it this way, but God is all knowing, and He's saying that everyone will have a share of what they have done,
of what they deserve, of what they have done, of what they're equal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. 33, nice number.
لكل جعلنا موالي مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون والذين عقدت أيمانكم فآتوهم نصيبهم إن الله كان على كل شيء شهيدا.
Before we get into the ayah, I just want to check the chat quickly. It says, check this website. It's got some translation with the meanings of difficult words which are changed. Check it out. Maybe this will help. We'll take a look at it. We'll probably take a look at it at the end of today's session. The YouTube can't see it, but we're talking to the Twitch chat. Back to the verse. And for all we have made وَلِكُلْ جَعَلْنَا مَوَالِي, and for all we have made heirs مِمَّا تَرَكَ الْوِلْدَانِ, from what has left by the parents and their relatives, and those whom pledged your right hands.
And again here it means it proves that it doesn't mean captives of war, because it says so. We made heirs to for the parents and the relatives, and to the those who have your oaths. This word again, and I think it makes more sense that it means your spouses or your wives, your husbands,
But also I think, like, what you if you've given an oath to somebody that you're going to take care of them, it usually means the people, like your house is but even like your relatives or your parents, and those. So
it mentions parents and relatives separately, and then it says
those who pledged their right hands.
So I think it can mean spouses. It can mean
but so when they say for those that you pledged for, give them their share. So it doesn't even necessarily mean spouses. Like if you owe somebody money, if you owe somebody anything. But this is again ties back to our understanding of what Malakat Aymanakum means. It's who you've given an oath to.
Yes.
The oaths can be to those who have some sort of sexual relationship or just a business relationship. Anyone that you've given an oath to. It can be a bit broad. Indeed, God is about everything a witness. God is a witness about everything, so make sure that you uphold your oaths.
Yeah.
Cool.
الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا إن الله كان عليا كبيرا.
Okay, now we get to one of the verses that Safa was kind of dreading reading when we first started the Quran.
Yes, but now not anymore.
Okay.
Because honestly, it is linked to a lot of wrong understandings.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of people who are not believers in Islam, of course, specifically use this verse, I think, in a lot of ways to prove that it's like a misogynistic religion, that it doesn't respect women, that men are allowed to beat their wives and so on. But this is all because of wrong interpretations, in my opinion, of course, of explanations that were given like thousands of years ago, which reflect mainly the mentality of the person who's writing the interpretation, because the when you read the old interpretations, it's written by people who did their best to understand these verses and explained it in their own mind.
Yeah.
But it was not, these interpretations are not meant to be sacred in any way, and I think that there is a reason why the verses of the Quran, it's really great that you can understand it in so many different ways, and I think our understanding here today is very different from the understanding of a person who lived 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think we should take it in the context of the world we live in, and the our minds today, how we think.
Yeah. But let's get into the verse.
Yeah.
So the men are protectors, or they're owing caretakers, like they have a duty over women because of what God has bestowed upon some of them, over some of them, over the others. So here it's understood that God has bestowed upon men something that makes them more caretakers for women. And because of what they spend from their wealth, so the righteous women, the obedient, the guarding, okay, here these are very distinct descriptions of women, guarding the unseen, that of which has been put, God has put them to guard by orders, so they are the guardians of the unseen, so they have a duty as well. And for those who fear, and for those of you that fear their ill conduct, then advise them and forsake them in the bed. And now here's the complicated term, أضربهن, which loosely translates from the verse ضرب, which means strike or beat, but we're going to get into an explanation that says something different.
Yes.
We'll use,
but this is in the translation and this is in the interpretation, that it's like beat them or strike them or...
Yeah, and this is generally what people use to say that Islam is a very misogynistic and violent religion. Then if they obey you, then do not seek against them a way. Indeed, God is most high and most great.
Yeah, so this is the translation according to the old interpretations. And what it means that if you are, and the women, if you fear their ill conduct, and their ill conduct is also very loose.
Very broad.
Very broad. So then you advise them first, and then the second step, if they don't go back from what they're doing, then you forsake them in beds, like you do not sleep with them, or and then you strike them. But let's go into, let's try to look at a different explanation. And I read a full article on this specifically, explaining how this verse can be understood in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So here it starts by saying الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. So قوامون it can be understood as caretakers, or they have some duty towards the women.
Yeah, the providers.
And then it can be understood also for what God has favored men in terms of physical strength.
Ability. Yeah.
Yeah, physical capability. Of course, it's not something to be argued that, of course, men are much stronger than women. And in the case of war, or come on.
I'm saying on average. No, on average is needed just because there are some women that are stronger than some men. So you say the average,
but you
the
take,
majority.
If I take from the strongest, men can reach a level of physical strength that a woman cannot reach.
So
this is why
the men physical strength and then the female physical strength, but there is an overlap between the two. And that overlap
if a man is very, very weak and a woman is very, very strong or something, but
there's a lot of weak men out there.
No, but there is the debate now about the transgender men who go on the female swimming competitions.
Yeah.
And of course they beat them like that because there is no competition. If you are in a swimming competition and there is physically a man and a woman, of course the man is stronger physically. But anyway.
The reason why I say averages is because there are not just some, there are lots of exceptions. There are a lot of women that are stronger than a lot of men. But
yes,
for the
if,
majority,
if an athlete woman, like a woman who is an athlete,
Yeah.
and then a man who's like on the couch all day,
Yeah.
she can be stronger than him.
but that's
if
all-
we talk
that's
about
all I added the word
the
averages.
society.
I get the generals, but it's
Yeah.
just let's keep it averages so that we're not saying that men are stronger than women, because that seems a bit wrong. But anyway, but back to the
It's
verse.
different perspectives.
Men have a
but
duty based off what God has bestowed upon them
especially
over
on that
others.
time, actually, like in the old time, of course,
Back then-
men were able to do a lot of
Physical activities.
physical work
Yeah.
that women were not capable of doing.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the men had a duty, kind of a duty,
Yeah.
to protect the
provide,
women or to
yeah.
provide to the women in that sense, and also because men were the ones spending from their own wealth.
Yeah.
Because I think women did not have a lot of did not have income.
So
I guess
That ties a
So-
huge difference between way back then, where men were the builders, the potters, the
Yeah.
crimes, the owners of work, whereas nowadays,
Yes.
this case of what has been given as a favor, there seems to be a lot more equality, so there's not as
Yes.
much of a duty that men have over women. That in terms of at least financial or ability, in terms of what they
So
spend.
now, of course, it's a different situation.
Yeah.
But at that time, this makes a lot of sense. That men had a duty to provide to the women and to take care of the women in a physical sense because they were more capable
Yeah.
physically than the women.
Yeah.
And then it says, so the righteous women, and it's talking about the righteous women or the
Yeah.
the believing women. Qanitat,
Qanitat
it
is-
can mean. Let me go to the.
For me, it can also mean loyal, like the ones that are like, not obedient means that you follow. Let's take.
And it can be obedient, like in terms of religious, like the righteous women who are following the text or like. Yeah,
كتر خيرك بالtranslation.
Yeah, so they are obedient to God, or like they follow the.
It's qanitat. It's not even translated the sound.
I think you need to put an alif, so that it understands.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, يملي qanitat.
Yes, I think this way we can translate.
Welcome to Arabic, ladies and gentlemen.
Still-
Okay. She's confused. Meaning
It is muti'at.
muti'at, the ones that obey.
Yes,
But
but
here you're saying-
you are talking about the righteous women who are
Ata'a. Yeah.
yes, who are obedient to Allah and obedient to their religion and,
Okay.
and obedient in the sense of they want to do their
Yeah.
role in society and,
And
in the
accepting
world
their roles as mothers,
Yes.
and respecting their
exactly. They are
the guardians,
guardians
of the unseen.
of the unknown, like God. And this is the
With-
explanation,
with
which is
what?
a bit different than the
بما حفظ
traditional.
الله.
بما حفظ Allah, like God protected certain things to be unseen, unknown, whatever it is, and they are guardians of what God has protected to be
Yeah.
the unknown.
Which
In the old explanations, there is a completely different explanation for this, but I don't even want to go into that
Okay.
because
Let's just keep it with what we see. But
Yes.
I also like this kind of concept that even though the women are obedient, they're obedient and they're also protecting something that God protects as well. It's a
Yes.
very powerful and royal and noble role.
Yes.
Like they have a very specific role to play in childbearing and
Yes,
caring.
so they are the guardians, the protectors, and so on.
Yeah.
And then those who you fear, nushuzuhinna, it's translated here and in the old explanations as their ill conduct, or that they are not like
Yeah. They're not doing what they have to be doing.
yeah.
They're not obeying. They're not being
Yeah,
not obeying
but-
God. Not obeying the roles of motherhood.
Yeah, in a way, it can be. They are not really doing the role, or like they are not. Nushuz. I read that the actual meaning is like when something goes higher or something. Yeah,
Exceeds.
is like, is not in the form anymore. Like it's.
It over exceeds its position or place or
Yes,
whatever.
yes. So
Or
if
duty.
you are, so in that context, it can be understood that if you are afraid that your wife, that your woman is not doing her role anymore, the role that she is supposed to do in the family and in the society and so on.
Which is be a mother, be a guardian, be a wife.
Exactly, like those things that were mentioned. So advise them, no problem there. And forsake them, like don't sleep with them in the same bed.
Yeah.
No problem there as well. But then it comes the word وَاضْرَبُوهُنَّ. And then again it comes the issue that they explain the same word in different ways.
Yeah.
And then they take this meaning here. So they take it that here it means that you strike your wife, which doesn't make sense, to be honest. But if you go to another verse,
Yeah. Which verse?
you can go to Al-Hadid, Surah 57:13.
57:13. يوم يقول المنافقون والمنافقات الذين آمنوا ينظرون تقص من نورهم قيل ارجعوا وراءكم فالتمسوا نورا فاضرب بينهم بسور.
فضرب بينهم بسور.
Yeah, so and seek light.
What did it mean?
Then put up between. Fadrab means put up between you, between them
a wall. A wall, yes. And then if we go to another Al-Mazmal 20, Al-Mazmal ayah 20.
Muzammil?
Yes. Al-Muzammil, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Oh, it's a long one.
وآخرون يضربون في
And
الأرض.
others traveling in the land.
So it's the same word, but here it means travel. It means distance, and the other one it was to put
A wall, a
barrier
between
among them. So the other explanation that I read, and this is not my own, so that if anyone has a problem that I'm giving my own thoughts, but this is not my own. These are things that, because I didn't find that the traditional meaning makes sense, I just looked at alternative meanings.
Yeah.
So if you look at these two, it talks about distance and about putting a barrier and sometimes it's said in Arabic يضرب الزمن, for example, like the time has passed. Or نضرب بالطريق.
Yeah.
You go on the road. So in that sense, it means that you completely stay away from them, like keep a barrier, keep a distance, keep a space from them. So the first step is that you advise them, then you do not sleep in the same bed with them, and then the third step is that you create a barrier or keep a complete distance between you and the woman.
And forsake them in bed and keep. I like that. Keep a distance between you and them.
Yes.
Then if they obey you, then do not seek against them a way. Indeed, God is of everything the most great. Now, playing devil's advocate once again, it does seem to be very specific about what happens when women don't obey.
Yeah.
But is there a mention of what happens when men don't obey? Which is where the sexism perspective comes from.
No, because in that context, here it says also that men are the ones who are providing for the women, and then...
Sorry, she was just saying, see ya for the next stream. Goodbye.
Okay, bye.
So far I gotta go because I also have to prepare dinner. Nice.
Okay, great. See you.
Yeah. So you're saying that men and women... I'm getting water.
Yeah, and again, this comes because, like, also God, the message was given at a specific period of time. It's not talking, it's talking to a specific society with specific circumstances. And I think at that time it didn't make any sense to say that a woman is the one who is, the men were, the verse starts with that the men have an obligation to protect the women in a physical way and in a financial way. And I have to say, until today, this is the standard setup.
Yeah.
You can tell me that there are some exceptions, and I agree that there are some exceptions where the woman makes more money, or that the woman is making more money, or the woman is the one who's protecting the husband for any reason. He's sick or he's like... There are exceptions, but the normal thing until now actually is that the men are taking care of the women in some sort of way.
Well, they have to. And I guess here the counterpart is we've read a lot of verses that talk about the male duty to wives, the male's duty to divorcees, to the mothers, to the orphans. So most of the time it's talking about the male duty.
Yeah.
But in this case it's talking about the woman duty.
Yes, of course. And exactly, the men have a duty as well.
Yeah, and their duty is mentioned almost more than women.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
And maybe we see something about the men going out, but
coming a bit later. Honestly, we've seen a lot about men. If I think about it, we've seen a lot about their responsibilities to their wives.
Yes.
About their responsibilities to how they must their responsibilities to war, their responsibilities to their enemies, their responsibilities to themselves.
Yes.
So if anything, if it's sexist, it's more against male duties than it is about women.
Yeah, I think so.
وإن خفتم شقاق بينهما فابعثوا حكما من أهله وحكما من أهلها إن يريدا إصلاحا يوفق الله بينهما إن الله كان عليما خبيرا.
Okay, and if you fear a dissension between the two of them, then send an arbitrator from his family and an arbitrator from her family. If they both wish to reconcile and find reconciliation, then God will cause reconciliation between them. Indeed, God is all-knowing and all-aware.
Yeah, so the first part, if you anticipate shaqaqan baynahuma means like a divorce, or like they reached the deadlock. So after the husband also created the barrier, created the distance, and so on. So it's talking, I think, also to the people around them. So if you see that the situation is really bad, that you think that the next thing would be that they completely get a divorce, for example, then you can get send how does it, a mediator from
an emissary,
from his family, and a mediator from her family.
Yeah.
And if both want to fix between them, or
if God wants to fix between them, then if they desire recollection, God will restore harmony between them. Because God is all-knowing and all-aware.
Yeah, but also we have to mention that divorce is allowed in Islam. So if it also reaches a point where there is no going back, then it can happen that
and I like the concept here is saying that if they desire reconciliation, God will reconcile between them, if knowing that there will be restored harmony. But if there was no restored harmony between them, then it's also implied and understood that God did not want this to go forward, and that there are sometimes some situations which is not, you don't have to stay married to those people.
Under certain circumstances, it can happen. I would just get some water.
Okay, no worries. We have quite a few verses left to go.
I know.
And this is all in the next section?
Huh?
This is all in the next section. Because I'm trying to see, I don't know what time we started. Because then it's going to be a really long episode.
So we can stop?
Do we want to stop here and...
We can.
I mean, I'm also happy to keep going, but maybe we keep it a little bit lighter, and then we have the next section is also like 24 verses.
I'm also happy to continue. I finished everything. So.
Let's keep going. If you finish everything, then let's continue it.
Okay.
I find no reason to stop, but I might start doing a coffee while this is happening to go for.
We can take a 10 minutes break.
Okay, I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then we can cut this whole part about us talking.
Yes.
Okay,
and then you cut it into 2 videos, I think.
Oh, I can cut it into 2 videos? So like, you mean instead of having, so just keep going, but okay, gotcha. So probably this discussion is going to be the end of the discussion. You're seeing this, we're building the plane as we're flying it. We've decided to take a break here. So if you're on YouTube, then we'll see you next week. But if you're on stream, stay with us. You don't need to hear this if you're on YouTube. Thank you. Love you. See you next time. وعليكم السلام. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thanks. Bye.